Okay.
Okay, welcome everyone. So I am Yoetzet Halacha Lisa Septimus of the Five Towns, and we're doing this simultaneously on the platform here and also on an Instagram Live.
I'm hearing some feedback. Are you?
I am. I know if anyone can kind of write into the chat if the feedback is disruptive or problematic for them, we might have to shut down one of these. So anyway, a Yoetzet Halacha is a woman who is trained in the laws of Nida and Mikvah extensively, and we also study other areas of life, of medical issues and psychological issues. And Chaya, maybe you could take a moment now to introduce yourself. You figured out the issue, Chaya. We have to mute ourselves when we're not speaking, at least in the platform. I don't think we have to do that on Instagram. So, Chaya, tell everyone who you are for a minute, and we'll get started.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chaya Khanen. I am the co-founder of The Frock NYC, a women's fashion brand. We're based out of Crown Heights, New York. I'm so sorry about that sound. I can hear it really bad. I hope you guys can't. Co-founder of The Frock NYC and women's modest fashion brand. Hold on. Time out. Lisa, I think we should take off the live. I'm going to share it with you guys. I'm going to save the video and share it with you guys. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to cut this. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining. We'll get this to you somehow. Okay. This is where we're meant to be. I don't hear you, Lisa. You're muted.
You were saying a moment ago, you co-founder of The Frock and grew up. Tell everyone you grew up in where that wonderful accent is from.
Okay. I'm like recentering myself back to here because I was very distracted. Okay, so I grew up in Sydney, Australia, in a great beach town, which was not Jewish at all in any way. And my father was the rabbi of the local shul. He's a Chabad rabbi, actually. And we grew up amongst beach and surf culture and going to shul every Shabbos. We were the rabbi's daughters. There also is a big Jewish community in Australia, but we lived out of that community, a little out of it. So I grew up there. At 18, I left home and went to Israel, went to do a gap year, did seminary there, moved, did a bit of traveling for a couple of years, and then settled in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York, where I looked for my husband. That's, came to find Yeshidach. And I did eventually, we met way back earlier, but that will be part of, what you might ask me, and settled here, got married, and been here ever since.
Okay. Thank you. So first of all, just some of you may wonder, how did we come up with this idea to do this session? And it's an issue that's been coming up more and more. I know people who are going through being married to someone who's suffering with an addiction. I've gotten calls as a Yoetzet and I'll talk about that in a little bit, that relate to this issue, and people who are struggling with the laws of Nida while married to someone with an addiction. And then really what spurred it was hearing a podcast with Chaya's husband. And it was a fantastic podcast where he told his story and how he ended up becoming a life coach. And at some point, the interviewer asked him about something related to his marriage. And he responded, I don't know, you'd have to interview my wife. Mm-hmm. And I thought about thankfully, people are talking a little bit more about addiction. People are educating themselves, and it's being addressed in schools. and we're becoming more aware, and they're talking about what causes it and how to treat it, etc. But no one's really discussing what it's like when someone's married to someone going through that. It's like we talk about the trauma that someone who has an addiction may have experienced in their childhood, or what caused them, but what about what it's like living through that, and living through that lack of control? So that's what really brought me to want to talk with you and bring this to other women. I think it's so important to bring it out in the open, and there aren't yet those support groups within the religious community, but hearing another woman's story is so supportive. So I got the privilege of hearing Kaya's whole dating story, and it's really awesome. There seemed to have been this chemistry from the beginning. And you had mentioned, though, there was something like always that, like held you back a little from him. Looking back now, did you have any sense of what the future held, or like, do you think, do you know where that concern came from? Or
I'm loving everything where you're going with this, and I feel like I have so much to say. So stop me when
okay,
keep going. First of all, I wish I would have heard something like this, 15 years ago when I was in the dating stages, and making my decisions to marry my husband, because I didn't even realize what an addiction was. I think addiction definitely has so many forms, and it looks like so many different things. And I imagined it as a drug addict sitting under a bridge, shooting up, or someone walking drunk, throwing beer bottles. And when I met my husband, I might forget the question, but when I met my husband, he didn't look like that at all. And even though his signs of his addiction developed from the age of 14, give or take. And it obviously, it gets worse and worse, but it didn't look like an addiction. So no, I didn't look at him and be like, oh, this guy's an addict. I'm dating an addict. How could, I go ahead and marry him? I just knew, okay, so let's go back. But I just knew something was there. Am I telling you how we met? I don't remember that part of the question.
Yeah, no. You know what? We have so much good, juicy stuff.
Yeah.
That although for another live on dating issues, we can get to that one.
So one point I do want to make, which I think is that there was something that I felt something was up, there were signs, physical signs and things that he told me that I could pinpoint, but really what it was this gut feeling inside that there were red flags. And I wasn't even used to listening to my gut and listening to that knowing. So I knew it, and it made me nauseous, and it made my stomach turn, and I was like, what is it, and why am I going ahead with this? But I still didn't give it enough weight and power, and thank God I didn't, because I'm so glad I'm here today. But still, there was definitely something.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes we don't even know, is it a blessing to listen to our gut or not? It's interesting. But so, I know Kaya talked to me about in the beginning, you kind of had fun together. Even his drinking was just sort of part of this, he's a cool guy, you're having a good time. When did you start to realize, was it, I assume after you were married, when did you start to realize it was too much? That there was a dangerous element to it?
The drinking never really stood out for me as too much. And it wasn't, it was too much, but it wasn't more than the average friend of mine, especially in the young Chabad kind of rebellious kind of young crew of my friends. We drank a lot. We hung out. I knew I wasn't an addict. I didn't have a problem, but we could go out together and have 5-6 shots. No big deal. I could never do that now. It's just I'm just different, made up a different person. But so that it wasn't alarming. Yeah, they did drink a lot. And yeah, I was like, whoa, you're crazy. That's a ton of alcohol, but it still didn't look too much.
Right.
I did start seeing signs when he first started smoking marijuana, and that was at 21 before we got married.
Oh, wow.
He called me and he's like, I think I'm going to try this for the first time. 21, my friends would have done it, way before that, years before that. But like, I also had a feeling, I'm like, this doesn't sound like a good idea. And he said he's doing it. And he called me to let me know. We were dating, kind of just to give me the courtesy call that he's trying it. And he said to me, or he told me later on after he had his first try, he's like, that's it. I'm never going back. This is the best thing I've ever done. And it kind of just like opened up his world. And I was like iffy and not sure about it. But that is like, from that point, I knew, and it developed into an addiction. I can't go without it. But I believed, or I hoped that it would go away somehow, or he'd figure it out, or he'd just quit. We'll get married, he'll quit. We'll have babies, he'll quit. And I really hoped that. But I knew, like, that's what really, like, what hurt, because I could feel that was his addiction, and that was what he was, like, married to in many ways.
Oh, interesting choice. Yeah. So I guess that leads into, I guess, feeling like your spouse is married to a substance more than you could already be difficult. And we'll talk about what were the ways, like, when did it start affecting you, and how did it affect you? Like, how did his addiction affect you as a couple?
It even affected me before we got married. But like, I'll say this, like, I remember when he flew to Australia for us to get married, and he decided, I'm quitting. That's it. I'm going to get married. I'm not going to be able to get any. I'm quitting. I'm just like, this is my chance. So he quit for like 3 or 4 days before, like when he left New York, comes to Australia a few days before the wedding, and he's a wreck. Like, imagine going into your marriage and like withdrawing from like the drug that you need. I didn't even know, because we didn't speak before we got married, and our communication in this department wasn't that great. But it was a couple days, or even a day or two into the Sheva Brachot, and he's like, I need to get weed. Like, I need to get weed. I'm like, what do you mean you need to get weed? Like, you're like fine with that. Like, what's the big deal? Already then, like that. And then I had to go and call my friends. So I never smoked weed at that point. Or maybe I did, but like, I didn't have any way to find it. And I was like, I had to call my friends, like newly married, and be like, hey, do you think you can hook me up? Like, already putting myself out there, embarrassed, like trying to find something for my husband that he needed. It wasn't like we could go down the road and buy a beer. It was like, and it wasn't legal. Like in America nowadays, go anywhere and get yourself something. But then it definitely got much worse. So we moved to New York. We had our honeymoon in Australia. We moved to New York, and every single day he'd wake up, get high, no matter what he did. He went to work every day, but then on a Sunday, let's go to the park. Let's do something nice together. Even before we had kids, let's go out for brunch, like things that normal couples do. He didn't want to go anywhere. Like, the more he smoked, the more he wanted to stay home, and the more he needed it. He wouldn't go out and take, a joint with him. So he'd have to like come back. So we'd go out for an hour, and already after like half an hour, he'd be like looking at his watch, fidgeting, nervous, and like needing to come back. We'd go to like social events with friends. And if he couldn't get his hands on weed, then he'd just drink, like stand there drinking, because he couldn't handle being there without that influence. Like, that was saving him. Then I got pregnant. Then I had baby number 1. A year and a half later, I had a baby number 2. And that was like the worst. Those years of like newborns, toddlers, because all I wanted to do was take them out to the park. And a 2-year-old in an apartment in Brooklyn needs to get out. A 4-year-old and a 2-year-old is like insanity, but he would sleep till 2 p.m. on a Sunday. Wow. And I waited, and I got mad at the kids, and I was like, wake up already. And I could go up and down the stairs to the bedroom, waking him, shaking him. Some days it was 11, and that was an amazing day. He'd wake up at 11, slowly take his time. And by then, like, the kid needed my daughter or son needed a nap already, and I was losing my mind. What I wish I would have known, it'd be like, take care of yourself, Chaya. Go, get out of the house, meet a friend, go for a play date, go for coffee, go to the park. But I waited, and like, it definitely took out my anger on my kids. And then he'd do the same thing, but even worse. Like, we'd get to the park finally, when you like take off your coats, or you're in the bounce house, unstrap, undress them, take off their diapers. And then he's like looking at me like this already, like, we need to leave. And I was just like,
wow.
And like, at a choke in my throat, like, what? And I didn't even know what to do or say at that time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really
It sounds very lonely. Like but like almost worse, because in this not accepting that you're alone. So trying, not just going ahead with things, but in essence functioning a little bit alone, certainly in the
Right.
parental role or in the friendship role.
Yeah, I
So
mean, definitely in the parental role. And I did escape a lot. Like, I mean, I can answer your question, but I was going to add, like, as soon as I could, like, put my kids to bed, I'd be going out with my friends at night, escape and, or pretend, like, meet up with
right.
them. Oh, Moisha's doing this. Or he had to meet up with a friend. He's not
Hmm.
sleeping at home till midday.
Right.
There was a lot of that.
Wow. Wow.
Mm,
Well, it sounds like you kind of, that was your way of saving yourself, taking care of yourself, you know?
right.
It's interesting though, the Sunday situation, like you were going out with your friends, but maybe with the parenting, it was harder to accept somehow that it was harder to come to do it on your own in the beginning. I don't know.
Definitely. Because as soon as my child would come to me and be like, "Mommy, I need this," and the other one would be crying, all I could think, like, all it was like anger, and I couldn't take it out on him. First of all, he's an adult, and
Right.
I wouldn't be able to, or not that I would, but like them, I could be like annoyed, like stop crying, kind of thing. Like I didn't
Mm,
actually do that, but like on a regular basis. But it was more like the anger came out through them, and I like, why are you driving me crazy, kind of thing.
right.
But really, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm alone. I don't have him with me here helping me, or how uncomfortable or how embarrassing that I'm the only mom by myself. So I'd get like the anger would be out of them instead of me being able to express that.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. By the way, do your kids like, now that your husband has been in recovery and is a life coach, which for those who don't know his story, it does have a bit of a happy ending here. Do
Yeah.
your kids, have you ever told your kids, like reflecting back on that time, or do they remember that time at all?
That's a good point. That's something I would love to do. My
At
husband
some
did.
point?
Yeah, I mean, they know whatever it means for them to know and how much they understand it. They know all about his addiction and that he went to rehab. Um, and he did apologize for not being there to them. But now that you're mentioning it, like that's something that I would love to do to them too.
Hmm.
Be like, that was
Interesting.
really hard for me and I took it out on you. So,
Interesting. Hopefully they don't remember, but
there's
yes,
definitely, they have to remember something.
yeah,
Even if they don't remember the stories, like there's memories.
yeah,
So
you're right.
I'm glad
Feeling in
you
the
mentioned
body.
it. Yeah.
So, earlier you said he was married to the weed, or he was
Mhm.
married, and I was wondering, like, I mentioned that this kind of came up in Yoetzet calls. And so I've had, like once a woman called me, not being sure if she wanted to go to the mikveh
Mhm.
when she was married to someone, just not feeling comfortable
Mhm.
having physical intimacy, because I guess they were so disconnected. It was an interesting shaila, and there happen to be some interesting halachic issues that come up with drinking. Because
Mhm.
first of all, the Shulchan Aruch puts as one of its rules, like you're not supposed to be together when someone's drunk,
Right.
and there are ways around, like, please don't, no one should take any, like, this is not meant to paskin,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
also the Mishnah Berurah clarifies that to say, im nit babel da'ato, like if their minds are totally in a confused state, like you're kind of like so out of it. But I guess the question is, how does something like this, how does feeling like your husband is wedded to a substance affect your ability to be together or to feel connected in that
Mhm.
way?
We definitely had a lot of love and a lot of goodness in our marriage, and I think that was like one of the main reasons why I was able to stay. So there was a lot of like ups and downs. I wouldn't say it was always like down and I was never able to connect with him. Even like, especially in the early days, like we were able to have fun together because I drank with him. We partied
Right.
together. We had like Shabbos and guests and people, and like brought out a lot of alcohol, and we made it like this is part of what we do. And that was beautiful. A lot of that was really nice. So I wouldn't say that like I had the issue of like not wanting to go to mikvah. Um, but it did affect our intimate life, and in a way that I maybe didn't even necessarily know how to pinpoint. Like, could be lying there in bed and like wanting to be with him, or wanting to work this out, but I'm like, something is not letting me let go. Something is making me angry, and maybe I was able to, I knew what it was at the time, but often it was just like kind of was a buildup of a wall of not being able to express myself and not being happy with certain aspects of our marriage, a lot of our marriage, and wanting to control him and wanting to change him and wishing he would be something else. So all of that, like, of course, emotional buildup and resentment is there in the room. So it just, it definitely affected our intimate life in a way that, like, we could have had so much more love and happiness together, but like there were times where it was just like, just this is not working out. And I think that's with anybody in any relationship. There's always going to be, good and bad and ups and downs. But in a dysfunctional marriage, if that's what you want to call it, or an addiction marriage, couples who are addicts, any couple who's going through anything, of course, it's going to affect the intimate life. So a lot of the time I thought there was something wrong with me, though, because why am I not interested? Why am I not feeling it right now? Like, what's going on? And everything, the scene was set. Like, I went to the mikvah, I was ready for it. We might have had candles, our kids were sleeping.
Right.
We had a great day together, or we didn't, whatever it was. And then I'm just like not feeling it. And I for a long time, many ups and downs, I was like, there's something wrong with me because I'm just not into it.
Wow.
And I think that's a lot of like resentment, repressed emotions, and just connecting for the two of us in that way.
Right. It sounds like, both with your kids and with your marriage, there were certain things you weren't letting yourself see the full picture yet, letting yourself understand where the negative emotions were stemming from or coming from, which
I think denial also helped me get through it. Not that I didn't know how much he smoked and how much he drank. Like, he didn't hide that from me, but like denying what it was and what it was doing to me. And I didn't have the knowledge, the program, the friendships that I did have a lot of friends, but that I was able to, like, I didn't know like what I know now. I wasn't able to express myself. I didn't have all the therapy that I've done. So,
Wow. Let me ask you something. At some point, did you try to get him to change or stop? Like, you said you were sort of in denial what it was doing to you. Like, was there any point where you're like, I don't want this, you have to change, you have to do something? I know that what from people that I know who have gone through stuff, that sometimes that doesn't always go well. If you push your spouse, you push them, it'll feel like you're being controlling or mothering or this or that. But I was curious if you had that phase.
I think he definitely thought I was controlling him in some ways, or trying to control him. But I figured out from like pretty early on that, like, or not even early on, halfway, that I just can't control him and I can't get him to do what I want. Like, even my parents, who never knew that he was an addict, they just knew he smoked cigarettes all the time. They're like, hi, it's so unhealthy. Like, you got to tell him to stop smoking. Like, you've got kids and it's so unhealthy. I'm like, I've tried. Like, I tell him to stop smoking. That just doesn't work. And little did they know there was so much more. But so I think like things like that, really, he didn't have a driver's license. I begged him so many times because he was afraid to, maybe drive under the influence, and he was afraid of like, admitting his fear. That I tried. The alcohol and the marijuana, like, I knew it was like way beyond my control. I just knew he always said, like, I'm trying, I wish. And he stopped for a few days here and there, and he stopped for a month here and there. And it was just like, he was just miserable. So I kind of like let out a sigh of relief when he started again. But I tried with little things. I quit smoking cigarettes, get your driver's license. None of it worked. And then after some time, I'm like, let's go to couples therapy. We need couples therapy. And he just looked at me. He's like, if you want help, go get help. Go to therapy. Like, I don't remember what exactly the words he said. Like, I don't need it, or I don't want to. he more like pushed me off, but that's what he was saying essentially. Like, I'm not going with you.
Right.
Until I figured out to go get help for myself.
Wow. So you were the first. So you got help before he did?
Yeah, but it wasn't like necessarily affecting like his, maybe it did, but I got help for myself because I was just losing it. And I threw
Right.
it was 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. This was like and I threw my phone across the room because I was so mad at him, and my screen smashed. And I went to the other room and I called my cousin who I was close with, and I was just like sobbing, and I just told her I threw my phone and he's not getting up. And she's like, call this person now. So she actually was the one. But I did. I made the call that night, and I saw her like that week. And I saw her for a year. So she was my therapist for a year before my husband did anything. But it had an effect on him. I just don't know what and how much. And I went for my own sanity.
Yeah, well, maybe he was impressed that you were doing it, and maybe it broke the stigma of like shame in getting help. That like he probably admired you, and seeing that you were willing to get help, I'm sure inspired him. So I guess tell, because not everyone had the opportunity to hear Moshe's story. What did it in the end? What was the impetus for his getting help?
Right. I can say the story. I don't know what like switched in his brain, and he'll, can share with you or whoever wants to reach out to him. But he was definitely progressing that way in like inside, retreating, going into himself, like moody, depressed, somewhat. And like kind of got worse, and I could feel that. But it led up to the Rosh Hashanah holidays. And at that time of year, like he just drank and smoked more and more. Sukkot arrived, and like our house was stashed. And everybody does, like the shul that we go to, like the community that we're in, like it's the big Yom Tov, let's drink. Simchas Torah is coming. Like I even made for the shul like these massive pitchers of sangria for like the women's side. Let alone like the cases of alcohol that was on the men's side. So Yom Tov's there, Simchas Torah comes, and he runs out of his weed. And he can't get on Yom Tov. He can't call his friend. He doesn't know how to get. So he just drinks so much and so much more. Like, and it was normal. Like I wasn't even like noticing, because everybody's drinking and I couldn't tell how much he's drinking. He doesn't like outwardly present as a terrible drunk. He's smiling and he's happy, and he's just literally filling his body up with a ton of alcohol. And the day goes by, he's drinking. We're out in shul the whole day. We have 2 little kids. Like I'm pushing a double stroller wherever we go. We come home, sun's setting, Yom Tov is coming out, and it was time to put them to bed, but I needed to go visit my cousin because something had happened over Yom Tov. And she lives down the road. I'm like, I was going to go to her for 1 hour. You put them to bed. He said, sure. Again, I didn't know how drunk he was. So he lies on our bed in our room with them next to him and puts on like a video for them to watch, and he passes out. I come home an hour later. I call him from her house to check in. Did the kids go to sleep? Like making sure everything's fine. He doesn't pick up, and I got this bad feeling. So I left her house. I come home, and they're out on the street in front of my house. We live in Crown Heights, but like the block that I live on, especially 8 years ago, was extremely dangerous.
Oh gosh. And how old were the kids?
2 and 4.
Like
walking around. It's like 8:30 at night. I don't know what time it was, but it was dark. It was night, and there were guys. I was sure it was in our basement, so the guys were coming in and out, like bringing out the sukkah and the bottles and cleaning things up. And they're like, "What are your kids doing out here?" And I was like, "I don't know." And like, I got so mad. Bring them inside the house, sit them down on the couch, and like probably give them an iPad because I couldn't take care of them. I like storm up the stairs to my bedroom, and my husband's sleeping, passed out, and I could wake him up maybe on a regular occasion. He did not budge. Like he was like gone. And I never did this, but I never done this before. But I went to the bathroom, got a cup of water, and just poured it on his head because I could see how like gone he was. He woke up in such a shock, and he looked at me and he's like, first he was like, what did you do? And he's like, we were a mistake. That was the first thing he said. I'm laughing because like it's so not his personality. He was never angry at me. He never got violent in his, but like this was like the worst thing, and it definitely hurt me because I was like, what? And then he said, a friend of his had overdosed and passed away recently, a couple months before, and he was like, he was smart. He did the right thing. He knew what to do. And I was like, uh-oh. And then I couldn't kind of control him. He goes to our back porch and starts pacing. He went to the bathroom and smashed his head in the mirror, and the glass smashed. I called my sister Simi, and I'm like, Simi, something's going on. I think you should come over. She knew right away. Her and Shua, Simi, and my sister and brother-in-law, like, were over in 5 minutes. Then I called his brother because I wasn't getting to him. I even if I said come sit down, he didn't, like, he looked at me like I was the devil. I didn't exist in his world. He was just like in this like very deep, dark place. And the things that he was muttering, like, I knew he was suicidal or saying suicidal ideations, or that's what you call it. And I called his brother. They came over a few minutes later, and then either I did or they called Hatzalah, and they sat with him out on the porch. He didn't let me come out, like, not, just to, like, build that up for a few hours. And they basically talked him out of his whatever and convinced him to get in the car with him, and they drove him to a psych ward. He was there for a week, and I knew at that point, I'm like, this is it. He's going to rehab. This is the end of this drama. This is the end of everything. He's going. And thank God he was willing. It was a roommate in the psych ward that was also an addict that convinced him to go. Anything I tried, I told him everything that I'm like, you can't come home. He didn't care. He's like, I'm not going. Until this guy said it to him, and then he called me. It's like, okay, I'm going to go.
Wow.
Which is amazing. So
in the beginning of the week, he still was not interested and not willing to go to rehab, but he had a change during that week.
Yeah. I mean, he was in like a terrible place for someone like him to be in a psych ward. Like, that was definitely added to it. And there was definitely some pressure, and he knew that coming home wouldn't be the same, but he was trying to get out of going to inpatient. He's like, I'll go to outpatient. I'll go to a therapist. We'll get help. I was like, this is not going to work.
Right.
And thank God he went.
Right. Right. It sounds like that story, in an interesting way, it wasn't only his rock bottom, but it was like, for you, a turning point. It was like, you never really set down a boundary, meaning like, you loved your husband, you were upset, you weren't happy, but you tolerated a lot.
Yes.
And like, that was your moment of like, no, this is it.
Right. That's amazing. That's so true. Yeah.
It sounds like this real blessing that I think one thing that you and him are very lucky is that your moments happen simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Like, they played off each other, his hitting rock bottom and your, deciding that this is it. This is my moment,
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very interesting. So, I mean, I know we spoke about this before, and like, obviously, and by the way, for anyone listening, feel free to put questions in the chat, and I think Chaya and I are happy to address if there are specific things. We definitely wanted it to be a conversation, if possible, beyond the two of us, even though, the two of us could definitely just go on.
You could talk for hours.
Yeah, we did. The first time we met, we went on for like 2.5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of told me you were like an autopilot at that point, right? In the beginning of his hospitalization and recovery, did you say?
Yeah, I think, what I'm remembering now, what's like is that like people would say to me like, I can't believe it. He's in the psych ward, or he's in rehab. I feel so bad. Are you lonely? And I was like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to us. And I felt it even from when he was in the psych ward, and I even more so when he went to rehab, that like, this is it. Like, this is the turning point. And I know that not everybody has that same, story or that happy ending. Not that everything's happy ending, but I really, really felt it. So less than autopilot, more was like I was so happy and hope and belief. And I was like, I'm doing whatever this takes to work, because this is the path we're on. Right.
Yeah. And I think what now I'm remembering better, that you also, like, part of it wasn't just feeling alone that was difficult. You spoke about like sort of being a little embarrassed sometimes.
yeah.
And now both of you are like people who are sharing the story. It's like it's like the veil has lifted. Since we're
Totally.
using these marriage metaphors,
Right. Right. Imagine like you were interviewing me now and I'm still married to an addict and I'm like, and he's doing this and he's doing that. Like, I don't think I would ever be able to do it. And it'd be amazing for somebody to share their story like within it. But of course, now it's like, look at my husband, look how far he's come. Look what we've done. Look what I've done. Look what he's done. And
Right.
it's all true. It's all like based on like, yes, I feel that way. But yeah.
So are there any challenges like, obviously, look, every marriage has challenges,
Right.
right? And to say, are there any challenges now? Of course there are, but meaning, are there any particular ones when you're married to someone who was an addict, who is a recovered alcoholic?
Right.
Or,
They say they're addicts. Like if you ask someone like at a meeting, they'll be like, "Hi, I'm Moish and I'm an addict." But however you want to call it. But there are challenges. There definitely are challenges. Um, and I think a lot of it is just like who we are as people and growing and emerging and different and with our own inner struggles. It's not necessarily so much the addiction, although like an addict does have certain addict tendencies that are always there. And unless they're constantly working on their program, they're going to slip back and you're going to start seeing signs of like the addiction, not necessarily the picking up to drink, but those signs. So those show up here and there. And I'm like, I hate that. But for the most part, I'm so grateful that I'm married to somebody who works like a program on like a daily, weekly basis. So that's just like, I don't see so much of that. But in the beginning, it was definitely like he was not around a lot, like meetings every single night. He went to his, 12-step program in his meetings. And even today, he doesn't go every single day, but he goes 3 times a week. And he has a fellowship that like comes first. I remember when he came out of rehab, he said, the number one priority in my life is my program, is my recovery before you. Number one is recovery. Number 2 is you and the family. And if he wouldn't choose that, he would eventually die. Like it's either like living with recovery and then, okay, so if he can be alive and happy and healthy, then he can, we can be number 2. So and I felt that right away. And that was a huge sacrifice. But for me, I know other people struggle with that a lot. And for me, I didn't so much because
struggle with being number 2, you mean?
Being number 2, with having them away a lot, having privacy, because he can't share who he's hanging out with. I'm hanging out with my sober friends tonight. I'm going to a meeting. He'd come back and be like, what did they say? Like, tell me about it. Talk to me. Like, let's chat about it. And he can't tell me anything.
Hey, it's kind of like being married to a rabbi.
Right.
My husband is very discreet. So, come on, tell me. No.
Yeah. No.
But yes.
There have been plenty of opportunities that I've been invited into his world. So we go on like couples retreats, and in the beginning, especially, we hung out with a lot of his sober friends and their wives. We did like summer weekend getaways. So thank God, like I was able to like see that and didn't feel so left out. But a lot of people do, and there is a lot of that element. And being the number 2, yes, sometimes that still bothers me till today. So like for him, his like recovery is like, I need to get up and eat breakfast. I need to do things for my own, like he needs to meditate outside. If things are getting hectic, I need 5 minutes outside. I'm like, you can't take 5 minutes. Like the kids are freaking out. But for him, he knows he's like feeling triggered or he's at his point. He knows, step aside. I'll come back as a better Moisha. So that's definitely difficult because I don't do that enough for myself. So I'm like, you're choosing yourself, or you're choosing this sort of program to take care of yourself. I wish I did that more often, but I'm getting better at it. And he's a great example. So
good. It's a good attitude. I know too many moms who would like go the whole day, not even making time to go to the bathroom.
Right.
You don't ever meet a man who does that. But no offense, men. But so I know we only have a couple minutes left, and a couple of questions did come up on the chat. One we sort of answered, but I'll read it to you anyway. And the other one, I don't think we did. Someone said, how did you deal with the relationship when you came home from rehab? I think we've been a little bit talking about that the past few minutes. The next question was, did you utilize Al-Anon, alcohol? And maybe just explain what that is to people.
Sure.
And
I mean, just so you know, like when he did come back from rehab, those first few months, it was definitely lonely. And he was like still like struggling. But there are times even today that like coming out of rehab, like there's still so much in the relationship that has to continue to be worked on. So that's that. Did I utilize Al-Anon? Yes. In the beginning, I did a lot. And I didn't really know what Al-Anon was until he went into rehab, and I went to visit for a week. They did like a program to teach the spouses or the parents or the children what this is all about, because I really had no idea. Then they explained it all. Al-Anon is a 12-step program for anybody who's anyone who lives with it or is affected by somebody's addiction. So for me, I'm the wife, but it could be anybody. It could be a sister, a brother, a best friend, a roommate, a parent, a child. Can go to. It's a 12-step program. It was founded by the wives of the people who founded AA. Right. And it's a 12-step program. It's anonymous. It's amazing, life-changing. I got like lazy about going, and I did go in the beginning for the first year a lot, and I do have like a WhatsApp chat with my Al-Anon people, but rarely go, and I wish I went more often because I could still use it today.
Right. I'm looking at another. Do you have any advice for someone whose mother and brother are both addicts? Any advice as a family member for how to have a relationship with these family members who are not getting help, but whom you have not been who aren't getting help despite years of effort?
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the first two words that are screaming in my head are Al-Anon. And I wish I understood what that meant when I was in that position of like, I've tried everything or he's not getting help. And Al-Anon goes along with what I'm going to say next is like, you can't control the disease. You didn't cause it. You can't control it, and you can't cure it. So even if you try with your father or your brother, whoever it is, like there's nothing that you can do except for take care of yourself and focus on yourself every day, every minute. And that means going to Al-Anon, getting, support, calling a friend, going to a therapist. Like the more and the more and the more you do it, probably it's going to, like you said, when I started therapy, like that person's going to see, hey, look, they're taking care of themselves. And you're going to learn tools in that program that are going to help you love with a distance and not necessarily be in this situation where you keep getting hurt and walked over and abused in that way.
Right. I think there seems to be a connection between codependent relationships and addiction. And it sounds like what you're describing Al-Anon is it helps also break that codependency. And maybe through developing your own sense of self and good habits, greater chance of intimacy and healthy,
healing, open relationship, 100%. Again,
and it's interesting, like you said, without even going to Al-Anon, getting yourself therapy, you feel that on some level, started the wheels turning for him.
Right. Definitely. And I still, like the times I go to Al-Anon today or get the help, it's not even because he's picking up a drink or he's acting like an addict. It has nothing to do with him. But I'm this person who is married to somebody, and we all fit into, not all, but so many of us fit into that category. And Al-Anon helps me today, even though I'm not living with an active addict.
Okay. So a couple other questions.
Sure.
First of all, a few people are curious about the community. Like, how did your Jewish community respond to him being in treatment or being, did you feel judgment? Did you feel embracing?
Yeah.
Was
amazing. We had an amazing community of people. I told my friends, every one of my friends right away, he's in rehab. What can we do? We're here for you. Oh my God. Like, I didn't know. The shul, his rabbi came to visit him. He's close with his rabbi, came to visit him in rehab and asked him, like, learned all about it. What's going on? What do I need to do? The Shabbos, he came back. There was no alcohol at the Kiddush. And they're like, and they welcomed him in that way of like, we're here to support you. And then he was like, from after that point, he's like, go ahead and drink. I've got my program. I'm working on myself. But the community, like, was amazing. And even in our Crown Heights community, a couple of years after he was in rehab, out of rehab and in recovery, he spoke at the local yeshiva. It was a big night of awareness. 800 to 1,000 people showed up, like
Wow.
rabbis of Crown Heights, and he got up there and shared his entire story, which was, I thought, was like mind blowing. And I hope that like whoever is here is listening and has that influence in their community could do the same.
Wow. So, you know, it's interesting because I think deep down, sometimes people with an addiction don't feel good inside. It's like you drink to cover something up.
Definitely.
But he literally, v'nahafochu, you know, like
Right.
he turns it around to becoming a role model, to becoming, you know, someone who maybe didn't feel good about himself, who's now able to inspire. And maybe that's one other question someone asked. I imagine it might be related to this concept. Are you nervous or vigilant regarding your children, that they may carry any addictive tendencies? And is he nervous?
He's not nervous. Definitely.
Okay.
That's an easy answer because he has faith in like different ways that I do. But from what I've learned is that preventing addiction is through education and connection. Like addiction, I think that's the line. Addiction is the opposite of connection. So we're very open with our children. As soon as they were able to understand, like at 2 and 4, no, we didn't tell them. They didn't even know how to ask, you know, where is he necessarily? Well, they did, but as soon as they were able to understand, he went to a hospital to get himself better. Like just like you go to fix your arm, you go for a hospital to help your insides, to talk about things, to share, whatever. I don't remember how I said it. We started saying it like that, and now we talk about it more and more. And I could definitely do more, but like talking to them about addiction. I worry about addiction like any parent does when like I see them on their phone scrolling and like we have to fight over the iPad. And I sometimes forget, like I completely forget that my husband's an addict or that it in some ways is a genetic disease. But which I don't even know if I mentioned that because it goes into a whole other, you know, scientific thing. But I don't really worry about it for the most part, again, because it's not like a secret. It's not something we, you know, push under the carpet. We talk about addiction a lot. Tell my kids that, you know, where I'm going tonight, like, where are you going? Let's explain to them what I'm doing. And I'm definitely still working on the connection part, like connection, love. And I think that's a lot what he was lacking as a child. And when he found his drug, he's like, here I have it. I've got my love. Like, that's all I need.
Interesting. Wow. Well, I mean, it's amazing. You know, I think I want to turn to like, what is sort of the takeaway? And I feel like probably for those listening, the takeaway is even just the inspiration from your story. But like, if you were talking to a woman who was just like you know, 5, 10 years ago, whenever it was, that who feels like she can't control, like her husband's not going to listen to her. He's, you know, his drinking is out of control. He's sleeping through days. He's not there for the kids. What would you tell her? What are the 3 points that, you know, or something you wish, you know, someone would have told you?
It's a really hard question. And I mentioned the Al-Anon part, and like in a way that's the practical step, but really like you can't really convince somebody to get the help until they're ready for it. And you're going to find the help you need when you're really ready for it. So in a way, me saying, go get help, go get friends, go get like, yes, but like, it's so hard to make that call. You're stuck in this like loneliness. So definitely not alone.
Don't be alone.
Right. Definitely. You're not alone. I mean, you feel alone, and I feel that you're alone, and I get why you feel alone. But I'm glad to be here to share my story because I'm like you, and there are many, many others that we don't even realize. I think like on a public level, like it's so good to share and talk about it more with others. So people who don't even realize that they have a problem or realize that this is something that can, you know, they can get help for. They just like, this is it. My life sucks. But what do I really tell that person? I think I'm feeling right now is something is like, close your eyes. It doesn't happen overnight, but like look inside and try to hear what that voice is telling you. Is it your gut feeling to say, get up and call someone for help? Is it to get up and leave, if that's what it is? Is it just, I don't know. I don't know exactly the next step to take. Like, yes, Al-Anon is a great piece of advice, but if you're not ready to go to Al-Anon, you're not ready to go to Al-Anon. Call a friend who maybe will hold your hand and take you to Al-Anon, but like really listen to that voice. And it's hard to find it when you buried it so deep, but try.
Right. And thank you. First of all, by the way, I actually love what you just said. It's funny. We started with like this inner voice that you kind of heard and you kind of didn't hear. And maybe though at some point we all do have to find our inner voices.
Right.
Like we go through the stage where we kind of feel things emotionally, but we block out the things that are unpleasant.
Right.
And then I think part of the whole process is like, I don't know, we got to let the unpleasant, we got to let everything hit us to guide us.
Right.
And
even if you don't know what that looks like, because I wouldn't have known what that means. It's just like, tell yourself that every morning. And I think it's something's going to seep in, like, open up. I'm here. I'm talking to you. Or get therapists to help you with that. But whatever it is, like it's there. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
No. That's all. We do have to conclude.
Yes.
I want to tell you that if you and I collaborate on this again, and I'll leave everyone with this, I love the concept. I know how much you love the 12-step concept. Mm-hmm. And I heard from your husband and the podcast, like a little bit of that connection to Jewish thought. And one day we have to connect it further. I feel like one thing that this is such a gift is that the support still stems from a little bit outside our community. And the more we connect the strengths of our religious community to the strengths of what Al-Anon and all these programs offer, I really feel we're going to change people's lives and make this easier to deal with.
I love that. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. And
this was so fun.
I wish we could see you guys on the screen, but hope you enjoyed. And thank you, Chaya. This was just unbelievable. You and your husband, I thank you for putting your stories out there to the public. It's just such a gift that you are giving.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It was so nice to do this with you, Lisa.
Same.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. Woohoo!
Okay.
That's so funny.